Hello everyone, Storm 101 here. Today we'll be taking a look into what is now Hurricane Marco, and we also be still keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Laura, which has recently passed, at least the center of the storm has recently passed Dominican Republic, currently affecting Hawaii, and eventually be affecting Cuba. But let's first take a look into Marco because we just got some news in that Marco is now a hurricane at this point. It doesn't show it on here because they haven't updated this graphic here yet. So it's at 75 miles per hour. It's moving north-northwest at 14 miles an hour with pressure 993 millibars, probably likely lower now. If you guys saying that I'm lying, but here you go. Click on update, you can see Marco becomes a hurricane from the National Hurricane Center. So it's actually 992 millibars as well. It's also moving at 14 miles an hour north-northwest. So yeah, so it's now officially a hurricane. Let's take a look into their latest code forecast. We do have hurricane warnings in effect for portions of southeastern Louisiana. You do have a tropical storm warning in effect for the coast of several coast of Mississippi and eventually to about a county into Alabama. You do have a tropical storm watch in effect for Mobile, Alabama. No watches warnings include uh, Florida at this point. Although you do have a hurricane watch out in effect for really the central portion of the coast in Louisiana there. I honestly don't know what her cities there. Maybe Lake Charles. They're not 100% sure on that, but here's their wind speed probability. So you're going to see Marco and also as well as Laurel get in this area. You got Laurel back here. It's off the screen, but you have Marco right here. So you got 90 to about 100% chance for tropical storm winds, which will likely see those numbers increase. Same thing for the percentages here. This is just because having to having better confidence. Now, hurricane wind speed probability here is also a little bit elevated, about a 20 to 30% chance. And I do expect these percentages to increase over time here. But if we go back to the cone here, you can see her kind of dies down quite a bit when it gets onto land. Now, let me show you guys what's going to be going on out ahead of us. Well, actually, let's first take a look to peak surge. 4 to 6 feet anywhere from Morgan City to Lake Orange. 2 to 4 feet from Ocean Springs to the Mississippi-Alabama border. And then 1 to 3 feet from Alabama to the uh, Mississippi border to the Florida border. Then you also got another area of 2 to 4 feet anywhere from the Sabine Pass to Morgan City. So there's going to be some pretty decent storm surge out there, and we already have evacuations for some of those regions in there. And yeah, it's not looking good for some of those areas as of right now. The arrival time, it should make landfall about Monday morning, should when it will make um, landfall. You see, it gets it to about around New Orleans about 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. So it'll be making landfall tomorrow morning. Then you got your rainfall potential here. You can see some areas could see 6 to 10 inches of rain. Now, this is from the Weather Prediction Center. So there's going to be a lot of rain coming. And here's their excessive rainfall outlook here. You got a slight risk for southeastern Louisiana, southeastern and south central Mississippi, and far southern Alabama, at least on the coast, on the Gulf of Mexico coast there. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. But what's going to be out ahead of this here? So this is what's going on right now. So you got Marco right over here where my mouse is. Currently a hurricane. You got tons of wind shear out ahead of it. So it's really going to slow down of its intensification. Higher the numbers, the more unfavorable the environment is for tropical systems. However, if you look into Laurel, it's in pretty good conditions for wind shear wise. Pretty weak wind shear, so it should not have a problem with that there. So again, and here's the forecast from the GFS for wind shear wise. You got Laurel right here. You got Marco right over here. You can see Marco just slams into that wind shear, and that's why it dies out somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico due to some of the strong wind shear. But then you get Laurel, which let's actually wait on that for now. Let's actually we're gonna try to keep things organized here. We're gonna still look into Marco. Uh, Now there is an eye. You can't see on satellite imagery, but there's an eye out there that's only 4 miles in diameter, the smallest eye ever recorded, and I believe that was by the hurricane hunters that went to the center storm. So there's an eye, but it's so small you just can't quite see it on your satellite imagery since it's just that small. So, yeah, on that. Let's take a look into the hurricane models here. And as you can see, a pretty good agreement here to more than likely make landfall in southeastern Louisiana and eventually dying out somewhere on land there. Here's your intensity guidance, and these models here, these three models are probably doing the best job as of right now for intensity wise, which is kind of hard to tell which one's which there. Uh, if we take a look to track some of the other models, this is actually brand new here. The Canadian Ensembles is now gone since it's just not a good model at all. Although that might not be the reason, but in my opinion, the Canadian model is terrible. But we now have the GFS Ensembles parallel tracks. This is two different GFS models again, the older one and the newer one. I think this is the older one, I believe. Is this? This is the older one right here. So it's a pretty good agreement. They'll be heading either in southeastern Louisiana or even southern Mississippi there for landfall. And here's your actual GFS ensembles here. You can tell they're southeastern Louisiana, so we don't really have any disagreements at all for landfall wise. So really, anybody in southeastern Louisiana will likely see impacts from the storm here. In general, really, most of Louisiana will have impacts from Marco there. So let's move back here. We're gonna take a look at um, Laurel. See, and that's like I said here, did not really die down all that much at all. Oh, passing Dominican Republic where it has that very mountainous terrain. Although it still has to go through Cuba. Although some models are indicating that it may just miss most of Cuba to the south. That's not good because that's going to give it more time to intensify, especially when it gets to the Gulf where it's going to be extremely favorable. And that's not, uh, man, I just lost the word I was going to say there. But, anyways, there, um, we do have Tropical Storm Laura, 15-mile-per-hour winds, pressure 1,004 millibars, so it's not that low on pressure. Although it's been moving a little bit faster, west northwest at 21 miles an hour, so it's moved faster since the last update we've made. I believe the last one was like 16 or 18 miles an hour. We've increased it to 21 miles an hour. At least the National Hurricane Center says. Again, we could take a look to wind speed probabilities here. So now this is for the now this is only uh, Laurel. You can see basically 100% chance for tropical storm winds for far southeastern Cuba, even for Dominican Republic and Haiti. Although, if we look later down the road, there's a 70-80% chance cut in the Gulf Coast of the Texas and Louisiana border, somewhere around there. Also been shifting us a little further west. The further west it goes, the more time it's going to be able to intensify. There's not really much of any limiting factors to this, unfortunately. Although there is a limiting factor to Marco, that's the wind shear. But the wind shear side of things is look like it's not going to be really around. You can see here, even your wind shear really starts to die down over land, so it's not going to even though it does indicate some weak wind shear, but that's not good enough for it to really die down. You can see here, then it gets on land there. That could become a big time system later down the road where there's going to be kind of another trough nearby, so it can also be a severe weather setup if the GFS does verify, but on that. But yeah, on that. So let's go back here. Go back to Laurel. Let's take a look at the tracks from the hurricane models here. As you can see, a pretty good agreement on the western side of Louisiana. So really, Louisiana is really undergone for two storms overall. Although it does have a chance for entering eastern Texas. Basically, really, the Louisiana-Texas border is looking to be your landfall type area. You can see it also curves through Arkansas into then moving a little bit more eastward into Kentucky there. Uh, Although a pretty good agreement from the hurricane models overall. Here's the GFS. It's almost pretty much the same thing overall, although it's a little bit further east here. This is the 6Z run, and the ones we're looking at is actually the 12Z run. Here's the parallel GFS. It's actually a little bit, quite a bit all over the place, but you can see the mean is pretty much going through central Louisiana. So there's a pretty decent agreement here. But you can see here what I'm talking about here. You know, the further east it goes, the lesser amount of time it's going to able to intensify. You can see there, this is by millibars. You see about as high as probably a little bit under 1,000. But the further west it goes, if it goes into southeast or Texas, it could get as low as a little bit below 700, not 700, 970 millibars, which is very low pressure. But where it's going right now, the average is pretty much looking to be, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a little bit lower than this, but the average is going to be pretty much 988 or 87 millibars is basically your average here making landfall, which is not too bad. It's not too bad. It's not like it's a major hurricane, although if we take a look into the intensity guidance here for the hurricane models, you got a couple models in major hurricane strength, which I'm going to tell you guys this, it is possible that this here could get towards a low end category 3. I'm giving this thing a chance. Probably in my forecast wise, I think it'll likely hit category 2. It's actually forecasted to become a category 2 hurricane by the National Hurricane Center. So I'll say that's likely going to happen. I'm giving this about a 50% chance of a low-end Category 3 since it will still have a lot of time. The environment is extremely favorable, although I don't think we'll see a Category 4, but that would be pretty impressive if we could see this take a Category 4. But I'll say this, a low-end Category 3 hurricane is possible from Laurel. Just look into how favorable the environment is and also how warm those sea surface temperatures are, and they are in the upper 80s, so it's very warm at this point. But you see the majority of the models are keeping it in a high-end Category 1 hurricane or even a low-end Category 2, but I'll say it could get a little higher than that. Just saying on that. And again, here's their forecast here. You basically got tropical storm warnings throughout pretty much the entire area of Cuba. Although we'll see probably more hurricane watches be in effect here. Probably when we reach into Monday evening, we'll probably start to see some hurricane watches be in effect probably for portions of Texas and Louisiana again. Although I think southeastern Louisiana will probably could get downgraded to a tropical storm warning later down the road whenever Marcos gets done. But you also do have tropical storm watches in effect for Key West there of southern tip of Florida and even for portions of the Bahamas there. So, but I think those areas should be okay in those regions in there. But you can see here, Laurel is a very large storm at this point here. It's got a pretty large tropical storm wind field. So, it also will have a little tougher time. Since this is a larger storm, it'll have a little tougher time of trying to intensify. So, but, and again, Laurel is not a hurricane at this point here, although we need to watch this very closely. Even though it's showing, I mean, this was back in 12Z, showing the pressure, probably the lowest pressure, where the center storm is over Hade. Although I got a feeling that it may be trying to transition a little bit further south, like where most of this convection is. And that's the biggest concern for right now, is that at least the worst case scenario will be is Laurel will miss most of Cuba to the south, and that's my worries at this point here. And also, a couple models do show that as well. You can actually see here what I'm talking about here. You can see a couple of models do miss kind of the main portion of the island here. You got, I believe you will call these kind of peninsulas of Cuba. Probably wrong on that, but you can see here something just skims along the coast there, so be having a little bit lesser chance of, inland contact there, at least for the center. But if we kind of go back here, again, here's your hurricanes force wind speed probabilities. I will likely see this increase here, so don't be surprised on that for those percentages start to increase. Again, here is this wind history, pretty large tropical storm wind field there as well. And here's the timing of landfall at this point here. It's looking to be Wednesday morning. It's looking to be your timing, or Tuesday night. It's what's looking to be the timing at this point from Laurel at this point. And one of the last thing we're going to take a look to is actually the European model, which is actually starting to pick up on Laurel. We're not going to take a look to Marco. We're just going to only look into Laurel. We'll also take a look to the GFS as well. So here's Sunday evening. You got Laurel right here in the Central Gulf. If we take a look to sustained winds. Oh, wait a minute. Never mind. Laurel's back here. My bad. Man, I thought I had it set onto like Tuesday, but that's actually Marco right here. You see it dies out quite a bit due to wind shear, but here comes Laurel right here past Cuba. Should stay getting into the Gulf by Monday evening. Always that's what's forecasted from this model. And as we kind of continue along with time, you can see how it really starts to intensify here. If we really zoom in here, try to get the highest number, 93 mile per hour wind. So that's getting close to Category 2 strength already. If we move to about Tuesday evening, it kind of died down a little bit, but I highly doubt that though. 70-30 mile per hour wind, so that's a hurricane. If we continue on later down the road, you can see it still intensifies, starting to get a little bit of a larger wind field. 84 miles per hour. I think that's a little bit underdone, but here you go here, about 100 mile per hour winds there by Wednesday, that's a Category 2 hurricane. Still gets stronger. You can see it. The worst case scenario is it's rapidly intensifies, nearly 110 miles an hour. You can see it makes a near direct hit to Houston there. But let me show you guys something. Now, this is wind gusts. 138 mile per hour wind gusts. That's very strong. Yeah, 150. Yeah, that's some very strong wind gusts there. So, yeah, 160. That may be a little bit overdone on wind gusts, but that is some very strong winds. You can see around Houston, close to 140. I mean, that is ridiculously strong wind gusts there from the European model. If you're interested to see how much rain it could put down, you can see here about 4 inches of rain per about 3 hours, but I think it could put down more rain than that. If we kind of back this up a little bit and take a look into the GFS here, it's pretty similar position here. Take a look at the winds here, sustained winds. 62 miles an hour. If you turn on wind gusts, it's a little bit higher. You can see here when it gets onto land here, 76 mile per hour wind gusts. I think that's underdone there. Although when you look at the sustained winds, it's about close to the same, with about 65 miles an hour, or 66. You can see here, then it kind of makes landfall at Lake Charles there. If we go to the European model, it's a little bit further west. If we kind of continue on, it kind of gets into the eastern portions of Oklahoma and even northwestern Arkansas. But if you take a look, kind of look at the wind gusts here, still pretty decent wind gusts of up to 60 miles per hour. That's severe thunderstorm territory. You can see it kind of increases with wind gusts significantly. Well, not significantly, at least the uh, wind field, at least, really, uh, gets larger. And this is where I'm talking about possibility for a little bit of a tornado threat here. I mean, if we take a look into how much this stability there is just south of the system here, you got isolated areas about 2,000. That's good enough for at least some severe weather for some of those regions there. So really, anybody in the southern and southeastern portions of the, or even eastern portions of the low pressure system, does have a tornado threat with it. But I'll say it this way, it's a little bit low end. Now, if we look into the GFS, it's a little bit different story. It actually moves a little bit faster significantly. And as you can see here, if we kind of back this up a little bit here, your tropical system is involved with another low pressure system, and your tornado threat kind of shifts a little bit to the north, more into kind of in Kentucky, Indiana, southern Ohio, maybe even down into Tennessee. There, uh, there as well there. And again, wind gusts here, you can still see some pretty strong wind gusts with it. And wind gusts that strong there, again, over land, like 50 miles an hour, that's good. That's strong enough to at least get some minor tree damage and maybe even some power outages out there as well. But this here could change as we're still a few days away from this happening, so some things could still change. But anyways, guys, this is all for you guys today. Hopefully, you guys did enjoy this tropical update. If you guys did like this tropical update, hit the like button. If you really do like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications for us to upload. And I just forgot about something very quickly. Let's take a look into how much rain that this is showing here. You can see some areas can see up to 10 inches. Fort Smith, about 10 inches. Lufkin, about 8.5. Houston, about 6 inches rain. But again, still a little bit over land here. Some areas could still see up to 5 inches or maybe a little greater here. That could really cause for some flash flooding concerns in some of those areas. Here's the GFS model here. A little bit lower, but you can see around Lake Charles about a little over about 6.5 inches of rain at highest. So again, don't forget about the flash flooding threat. There's rather because I could put down a lot of rain. But that's it, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.